new species of creature has entered your dungeon. Your dungeon is under attack.
Originally, this review was going to be about Dungeon Keeper 1, but whenever I played the first game, I kept thinking about how much rather I'd be playing the sequel, so I stopped. Instead, I started up my second playthrough of Dungeon Keeper 2. I don't think there's much point in talking about DK1, because I do truly believe that DK2 is superior in nearly every single way. Having said that, Dungeon Keeper 2 is one of the best games ever made. Let me explain. Here's a bit of context. I originally discovered DK2 through a friend, who showed me the game on his laptop. I remember initially liking it, but would end up forgetting about it. Years later, I would go on to rediscover the game and watch some Total Biscuit's review on it. And it looked really fun, so I purchased a copy on GOG, and I actually liked it a lot. The RTS genre holds many great classics, along with another type of game within that genre, the God game. In God games, you don't directly control your troops, but rather heavily influence them to do so for you. However, there is one major exception in Dungeon Keeper, which I will talk about later. In Dungeon Keeper, you keep a dungeon. The main objective is to defend your giant alternative medicine crystal and kill lords of the land and other rival keepers who stand in your way. What makes Dungeon Keeper unique and interesting thematically is that you're the villain in the story, controlling demons, goblins, and even skeletons. Meanwhile, the landlords are quote-unquote on the good side and have various generic heroes like knights and wizards. After each level, a Horned Reaper, who's pretty much the mascot for the game, comes to collect the big gem and signify their level has ended. His name is Horny. This is the Hand of Evil, essentially acting as the player's cursor. With the Hand of Evil, you can pick up creatures to assign to work, slap them to make them work faster, and just generally interact with various parts of the world. I think a lot of RTS games would benefit from the slap mechanic. The reason I'm mentioning a cursor of all things is because of how well it's been implemented. In order to maintain a dungeon, you need basic supplies like food and shelter in order to make your creatures happy. Some of them hold certain agendas and dislike each other, with you needing to separate fights every so often. While on the topic of creatures, let's talk about some of the more prominent ones. The Imp is easily the most important creature at your disposal. They act as the building blocks of your keep. Unlike other creatures, they don't need food or shelter, they just simply want to leech off of your mana because it's what sustains them. They are the only type of creature which can maintain a dungeon and mine, so you quite literally need them in order to progress. Warlocks are my personal favorite creatures, because not only are they cool, but they're also the only ones who can upgrade your spells, another powerful tool in your arsenal. They're also very useful in combat while acting as support, because not only can they spam fireballs, but they can also heal other creatures. Trolls can be used to manufacture various traps and buildings, and can be extremely useful for expanding your dungeon. With them, you can build a few sentries and fear traps to politely inform the neighbours that you want nothing to do with them. There's a lot more types of creatures, but these are, in my opinion, the most important ones. Your creature's AI actually works very well, and surprisingly, the creatures actually have readable personalities. The Warlock is narcissistic and arrogant.
You're goddamn right.
The Goblin clearly has lower intelligence than the other creatures and is portrayed as a high school bully, and Horny is like the middle-aged dad who's sick of everyone else's shit and just wants to get work done. Doom Eternal's game director, Hugo Martin, talked about how he designed demons in an interview done by NoClip and mentions,
every time you design something, I feel like it's important that you think of it like a person, like give it a kind of a personality. Like if it talked, how would it talk? Would it have like an accent? Would it be like an old person, a young person? So it's like, if you look at the paint element, I kind of think of him like a grumpy old man, and a lot of his animations and the way he looks, he just looks very crotchety if you actually look at the way he looks. And he has this one bull charge that he does kind of where he kind of like walks like this. It's really funny. It's kind of like a grumpy landlord. I think all the best characters have that, whether it's Jabba, like, you know, this really fat, you know, gangster, or Yoda, like all the great characters that really stand the test of time. They generally have like a personality. And
Doom Eternal was released in 2020. Dungeon Keeper was ahead of the curve over 2 decades ago. Even though the creatures are literally just a bunch of ones and zeros, it doesn't feel like it, because you feel like you can actually tell what they're thinking at any given moment. Creatures aren't your only means of attack and defense, however, for you also have spells. Spells are one of the most interesting additions to both games. They vary in usefulness. Heal can be extremely useful to support your creatures in battle. Trade Gold is great for when you're low on moolah but high on mana. Sight of Evil allows you to take a peek into the darkness and pairs extremely well with save scumming. Call to Arms lets you control your creatures and make them charge into battle like how a moth charges into a lamp. Thunderbolt is borderline overpowered and allows you to skip multiple fights as well as quickly kill landlords by simply spamming mouse 1. It's probably the most powerful spell in the game. And while Thunderbolt might be the most powerful spell in the game, Possession is the most interesting and innovative spell and definitely my favorite. When you cast on one of your creatures, you take over their mind and see the world through their eyes. This allows you to temporarily turn the game into an FPS and use your creature's abilities. This isn't just for show either, as when you possess a creature, they become more efficient and quicker. While possessing a creature, you can press 7 on your keyboard and start grouping your creatures together, which can be very useful for charging into enemy lines. Okay, so the creatures are great and all, but what about the environment? A game can only be as fun as the terrain allows it to be. Well, I honestly think that at the core, the level design is pretty great. There's an important sense of discovery involved. You see, Dungeon Keeper doesn't so much have levels as it does playgrounds. Apart from a few exceptions, you can interact with and or break pretty much anything. There is a sort of a sandbox mode presented in My Pet Dungeon, and it honestly doesn't feel too different from a normal campaign. Let's talk about some of the rooms that can be built and or used. I've already mentioned the alternative medicine crystal, which acts as your health. This is the portal where your creatures actually come from. Depending on what other rooms you have and what size, the portal lets in specific creatures that attract to those rooms. Then there's the hatchery and lair, where your creatures eat and sleep. The library, which attracts warlock and is used for researching spells. The prison and torture chamber, both of which are used to turn enemy creatures and heroes to your side. And the workshop, which is where your trolls manufacture buildings. In total, Dungeon Keeper 2 has about 20 levels, not including secrets. I recommend enjoying yourself and taking your time and playing each level instead of just rushing through things. Not only will this make the campaign last longer, but also more fun. When playing, don't treat it like a chore to rush through, but rather like a fine wine. Overall, Dungeon Keeper 2 has some of the finest and richest gameplay to offer, where the developer will be fucked over by EA. Following Bullfrog's acquisition by EA, the developer was left in a sort of limbo state and the company was effectively dead. Dungeon Keeper 3 was cancelled, and some of the people behind Bullfrog went on to form their own studios like Lionhead and 2 Point. I truly do recommend Dungeon Keeper 2, it's very cheap and very competently made. Having said that, thank you for watching, I'm excited about the next few videos.